Welcome back to ProSex Studios. I'm still Brian Downs, and in this episode we're going to be talking about that valedictorian of titty comedies, Old School, starring Luke Wilson, Will Ferrell, and some other people. Now, hooray for Old School being an old school titty comedy with nudity and direct references to sex and so on. It's no PG-13 here. Oh no. But ultimately, what is the attitude about sex that Old School is teaching you? Well, let's take a look. The first 4 minutes of the film is taken up with Mitch, played by Luke Wilson, flying home early from a lawyer's conference he was attending, and he walks into the house that he shares with his girlfriend Heidi, played by Juliette Lewis, and starts hearing sex sounds. And immediately, he's worried, he's upset. You can tell on his face, anxiety, fear. We in the audience are going to share his feeling. Noises of sex from another room are scary. In fact, this is number 2 in the negative meme list. Danger is sex. Sex is presented as dangerous, alarming, threatening, or conversely, danger is presented as sexy. But here it is, danger is sex. Sex is threatening and alarming. But Mitch goes into the bedroom and discovers that his girlfriend is not being unfaithful. No, she's sitting in the bed watching pornography on the screen. Another interesting point. She's watching pornography on her television. This movie came out in 2003. So watching pornography on TV was something people did. Somehow, it's okay to see naked breasts on a screen on your screen, but not so much on your screen. If the characters in the movie you're watching are watching a movie you shouldn't be watching, you can watch them. That's kind of strange, isn't it? One of these weird little justifications that they make you do in your head. Anyway, having discovered that Heidi is watching porn, Mitch gets excited. This thrills him. This creates sexual excitement in Mitch. He says, "This is a major turn on. Let's go with this. Is this what you do when I'm gone? I mean, I do it myself every once in a while, but to magazines." He starts to undo his tie. Meanwhile, Heidi is looking upset, fearful, anxious, because she knows what's going to happen. Mitch starts to undo his tie. Mitch is in his own home with his live-in girlfriend, expressing his sexuality, talking about his own sex life, talking about when he masturbates, saying to his live-in girlfriend, "Let's have sex." And he starts to take his clothes off. "I want to have sex with you," that's what he's saying right now. And he gets this far in taking his clothes off, bam! 2 naked, blindfolded strangers come out of the bathroom. It turns out that Heidi was certainly planning on being unfaithful. Those people pop out of there like a goddamn magic show. And the man says, of these strangers, the man, there's one man, one woman, and the man says, "Hello," and Mitch turns around and screams, "Nah!" He reacts to a friendly hello and a pretty pair of tits the way he would react to a sudden chainsaw. Dangerous sex. And of course, this is also negative meme number 1, the wanting disaster. Mitch decides he wants to have sex with his own girlfriend in his own house, gets this far toward that process, and pow! The world as he knows it is shattered. The wanting disaster. Wanting sex, having sex, thinking about sex, desiring sex, sometimes even just talking about sex leads to a bad result. Very often, instantly, as here. So Heidi is unfaithful. This, of course, is the worst thing that a partner can be. Let's talk about that for a second. How often in movies and television do you see people break up, have a relationship, and because she was at the office too much, or he was always running down her fishing hobby, or anything, any reason besides infidelity? Infidelity's got to be the lead. There's some exceptions, I'm sure. If you think of any, hey, put them in the comment section, because I want the information. I'd like to take a look at those films. But in Hollywood, the major reason to split up with anyone is sexual infidelity. It's the worst thing a person can do, is have sex. That's the negative meme. It's villains who sex, by the way. So, cut to Mitch and Heidi in the kitchen. The strangers are gone. And Mitch is trying to talk to her, and he says to her, be honest. Tell me this wasn't the first. I'm sorry. He says, be honest. Tell me this is the first time this happened. And he says, do you want me to be honest, or do you want me to tell you this is the first time? To which Mitch replies, Jesus, what is wrong with you? This is another negative meme. It's villains who sex. And very often it's the sex that makes them the villain, as in this case. Heidi is a villain. You're not supposed to like her. You're not supposed to root for this relationship. You want Mitch to flee from her. Why? She has sex with somebody other than Mitch. But it's sex that is wrong with her. There's no version of this where he comes home and discovers that she likes, sorting M&Ms by color and then he dumps her. No, it's going to be about sex. It always is. Heidi replies with, nothing is wrong with me. That's what villains say. That's what villains say. Nothing is wrong with my sex life. She says, I've tried to tell you about this. And she goes on to explain that she's often talked to Mitch about these ideas of non-monogamy and so on. And Mitch says, when? And she says, well, in bed and stuff. And Mitch says, well, I just thought you were talking dirty. She says, well, yes, but I was also, trying to tell you something. Notice the phrase, talking dirty. Notice the language we use with sex. Saying things that are designed to create sexual excitement in your partner, in the person you're trying to be nice to, is talking dirty, right? Dirty is a word very often used to mean sexy or sexually exciting. Why? Because of things like this. Just listen to the negative vocabulary. But let's break this down. Heidi is at fault. First, if this was the kind of sex life that she wanted, she should have sought out someone who also wanted that sex life. If you're interested in whatever it may be, ropes, whips, mayonnaise, anything, don't surprise people with it. Don't get in a relationship with someone and then try to introduce whipped mayonnaise, because the chances are they're not interested. Statistically speaking, the chances are they're not interested. In fact, the best thing to do is go and find someone who shares your interests. There are websites designed to put you together with these people. Heidi should have communicated with Mitch more clearly and more honestly, and she certainly should not have been carrying on behind his back. That's not okay. If you tell someone you're in a monogamous relationship with them, you should be in a monogamous relationship with them. My own view on monogamy is that that's very, very difficult to do. The monogamy is really a recipe for unhappiness. How many monogamous people do you know who are happy? They're not happy. They've just settled into being each other's jailers. If you're going to say you're in a monogamous relationship, then you should be in a monogamous relationship. In any case, Heidi's the villain. It's villains who sex. Sex is what's wrong with you. Your problem is sex. Now, Old School is unusual in that it does make direct reference to Heidi and Mitch's sex life together. When they're talking about their own sex life, when Mitch says, when did you tell me about this? And she's like, well, we were in bed. But notice that it's set in this context where it was bad, right? They have had sex together. They talk directly about their past sexual encounters, but only to now cast those encounters in a foreboding light. Right? What she said then, he didn't really understand what she meant, but it was prefiguring this catastrophe. They only refer to their sex life together in this one instance, and it's so that Mitch can say, you said some really sick stuff. It's villains who sex. Notice, of course, that we never see Mitch and Heidi embrace or kiss or make love, not ever, not in a photograph, not in a flashback, nothing. There seems to be no sexuality between them except for this one conversation, this one brief moment where they talk about their previous sex life in order for Mitch to characterize her sexuality as sick. So let's cut to Frank's wedding. Frank, played by Will Ferrell, of course, a very talented, terrific comedian. Frank is getting married. We're looking at the wedding ceremony. Frank is waiting at the altar for his bride to come in, and he's there with his wedding party, which includes his good friends Mitch and Beanie, played by Vince Vaughn. Beanie is the fast-talking Vince Vaughn type who is telling Mitch that Mitch should be thrilled that Heidi has this view of sexuality. Isn't it amazing to find a woman like that, to which Mitch says, I wasn't looking for that. Of course he wasn't. That, because sex is bad. And then Beanie tells Will Ferrell's character to walk away from the wedding ceremony that they are all in right now. It's an extremely funny scene, by the way, go back and watch it. Get out of here, walk away from this, don't do it. Hey, I'm married, Beanie says. That's no fun. Get out of here and seek sexual variety. He says, let me be the first to say congratulations to you then. You get one vagina for the rest of your life. Real smart, Frank. Way to work it through. Beanie says, hooray for sexual variety. Your problem is sex. That's negative meme number 3. When a protagonist likes sex, seeks sex, wants sex, that's bad. That's a no-no. Your problem is sex. That's their character flaw. Now, is Beanie a protagonist? No, we're not sure. Not yet. Turns out he is. And there's a moment we're going to discuss about that. At the reception, Mitch tries to kill his pain by getting double plus wasted, and he encounters Nicole, played by Ellen Pompeo. Nicole is a woman that Mitch went to high school with. He had a crush on her then, and he's attracted to her now. She's recently come back to the area from Denver. And Mitch is so drunk that he spills his coffee on her crotch, and then kneels down in front of her and puts his hands up her skirt, really, in a drunken attempt to try to fix this coffee problem. Nicole starts yelling, and Laura, who's Beanie's wife, played by Leah Remini, dives into the fracas and says, what are you doing to this poor girl? Stop it. No, inappropriate. Inappropriate. Stop it right now. This is the wanting disaster, negative meme number 1. Mitch was sexually attracted to Heidi, was in a sexual relationship with Heidi. This has led to him being heartbroken and shattered and reeling drunk in public, which has led to the coffee in the vagina faux pas, which leads to the hand up the skirt faux pas. Oh, by the way, incidentally, he's also attracted to Nicole. Wanting sex, being interested in sex, leads to a bad result. I want to point out something else. Notice that in this wedding sequence, the ceremony, the reception, we never see Frank engage in any kind of sexuality with his bride, Marissa. They don't kiss. They don't embrace. They don't sneak off into the back room for a quickie. They don't talk about sex to one another or to anyone else. There's no moment where Marissa says, I'm going to get you home, Mr. Frank, and make you perform your husbandly duties. No, nothing doesn't happen. They don't speak to one another about sex. They don't kiss, don't embrace, nothing, no sexuality, zero. This is another negative meme celebrating celibate marriage. Hollywood likes to push forward the idea that the relationship you ought to root for is the relationship with no sex in it. And married people, married couples, often have no sexuality between them. Later in the film, there is one moment where Frank gives her a peck on the cheek. That's it. That's all. In this entire film, Frank just demonstrates no sexual connection to, or sexual desire for, or sexual activity with his own wife. Leaving the unfaithful Heidi behind, Mitch moves into a new house, but it's near campus, it's near the local university, and Beanie is immediately thrilled at the sexual opportunities this will present. Ooh, all these co-eds. So Beanie, who his problem is sex, decides to organize a big party, releasing Mitch back into the wild now that he's single, and he's going to invite a lot of people from the community, which is mostly young adult students. Notice, Beanie is married to Leah Remini, the actress. Leah Remini is the actress playing Beanie's wife. Never any mention of sex in his relationship with his wife. They have children, so they must have had sex twice at least. But Beanie never mentions his sex life with his wife. We never see them embrace. We never see them kiss. We certainly never see them in bed together. There's no sexuality demonstrated between them. There's one moment where his wife is with her friends elsewhere and speaks disparagingly of Beanie's skill at oral sex. That's it. That's the only reference to sexuality in this married couple, is her running him down to her friends. Celebrating celibate marriage. This is the relationship, by the way, that we're supposed to support. Beanie should be devoted to his wife, with whom he has no sex. So Beanie arranges this huge party at Mitch's house, And the next morning, Mitch wakes up with a beautiful young woman named Darcy in his bed, and he's surprised and embarrassed to find her there. He's embarrassed immediately. Did we see the sex? No. We did see him meet Darcy at the party where they come together in the crowd and speak briefly. Hi, how are you? On the great party. And then, bingo, she's in his bed. She's dressed, well, in her underthings, but we don't see anything that would break a PG-13 rating. In this case, Old School is actually rated R. They had sex last night. It's implied that they had sex. She doesn't say, we did it, we screwed, we banged, we bumped uglies. No, she doesn't say that. Nobody else says that. No other character brings it up. It's implied that they had sex. Because, hey, we can't say that our hero actually had sex. He's embarrassed. Darcy takes it in stride. She's like, we were just having fun, and she leaves. Okay, but this is still the wanting disaster. He had sex with Darcy, or at least it's heavily implied that he did, and he's immediately embarrassed about it. It's terrible that you had sex. No, stop it, bad boy. But bigger disaster, because within a matter of hours, Mitch is in a meeting with his boss. Mitch is a lawyer involved in real estate, apparently. And Darcy walks in because it turns out she is the boss's daughter. But Darcy doesn't want any trouble with her dad, so she pretends never to have met Mitch before, and he, of course, goes along with that. Dad, the proud papa, beamingly reports that Darcy will be graduating from high school in just 7 months. Which, of course, implies that she's under 18, or barely 18. The movie never actually specifically says what her age is, and in the United States, most of the United States, the age of consent is 18. Some states no. So it's even possible that Mitch has committed a terrible sex crime, statutory rape. All unknowingly, of course, with a young woman who is fully enthusiastic about the encounter, but still doesn't matter. Felony sex crime. Maybe. The movie doesn't specify her age. So, Frank's hijinks at the party, because he went streaking, land him in couples therapy with his wife the next day, where both the therapist and his wife encourage him to share his feelings. This is a safe place, this is a nest. And Frank admits that he's feeling a little freaked out about only having sex with one person for the rest of his life. An idea, obviously, that was planted by Beanie. And so, Frank, having been honest in therapy like you're supposed to be, otherwise, what's the point of being there, finds himself in Mitch's driveway asking if he can stay at Mitch's place for a while. Marissa threw his ass out. They've been married a week, maybe. I'm not sure if the timeline is specific, but not very long. A few days. Boom, he's out. Because he was truthful about his sexual feelings. And he ran drunk and naked through the neighborhood. The character who admits that he desires sexual variety isn't acting on it, but desires it, is a fool for admitting it, and a clown the rest of the time. Your problem is sex. In the meantime, Beanie has launched plans to create a fraternity. Won't that be fun? Also, they're already in conflict with the dastardly Dean Pritchard at the university because of this huge party they threw, which was a disturbance in the neighborhood. And Dean Pritchard is trying to get them thrown out of the house. But if they start a fraternity, then they get to stay because they're involved in campus life. And he gets the others to follow along. And of course, a lot of the plot and hilarity, actually, of this extremely funny film is about that. 47 minutes into the film, everyone is attending a birthday party for one of Beanie's kids. Beanie is quite wealthy. He owns 6 speaker cities. And everyone's attending the birthday party. And Nicole arrives with her boyfriend, Mark. You'll remember Nicole is the woman who Mitch is attracted to. They went to high school together. He's always had a crush on her. She's recently come back to the area. And here she is with her boyfriend, Mark. She immediately uses the word boyfriend to describe Mark. This is my boyfriend. Very often in movies, see my video about Iron Man, about Tony Stark, those words are totally avoided. Even in characters who are clearly a couple, they never use a word like boyfriend or spouse or lover or girlfriend or anything to describe one another. She says boyfriend. Okay, so that implies a sexual relationship. But we never see them kiss, or embrace, or have sex, or even occupy the same bed at the same time without having sex in that bed. Nicole has a daughter, but we can tell that Mark is not the biological father because Nicole says she's been with Mark about 2 years and the daughter is 7 or 8 years old, so obviously he's not the biological father. Nicole has no sexual relationship with Mark. She uses the word boyfriend, but we don't see any sexual relationship because we got to push sex way to the back of the class. Nicole and Mitch then have a scene together in the kitchen during the party that builds their chemistry. By the way, Nicole is outrageously flirtatious with Mitch for a woman who says she's in a monogamous relationship with Mark, but let's set that aside, except to remark that it's bad behavior by women, something that I can't avoid talking about on this channel. Women often engage in behavior that when women do it proves that they're spunky or have moxie or they're, ingenious and full of agency. If a man did it, it would be terrible. She's in the kitchen really, leaning in to Mitch and talking in a low voice and making a lot of eye contact. And that's cool. She's the heroine. But at the same time, no more than 3 minutes after Mark's first appearance on screen, no more than a few minutes after the first mention of his name, he is making out with one of the catering staff in one of the bathrooms. He is unfaithful, and apparently unfaithful in casual encounters like this with a woman he met, earlier at the party. What Nicole is doing in the kitchen is fine. What Mark is doing in the bathroom is terrible. And Mitch happens into the bathroom and sees Mark, but decides to keep that to himself. Mark is a villain. How do we know? It's villains who sex. Not with Nicole, though, with other people. 58 minutes into the film, and the frat house is celebrating Blue's birthday party. Blue is one of their members. This frat does not discriminate based on age or enrollment status at the university, so it's Blue's 89th birthday. Upstairs, a co-ed named Amy is coming on to Beanie, although he's sort of coming on to her. I mean, they're in his room alone together, drinking. But anyway, she certainly leans in for the kiss, and Beanie stops her. No, can't do it, I'm married. And Amy leaves in a huff. But this is where we find out that Beanie is a protagonist. It's not, it's villains who sex, it's your problem is sex. And when Beanie turns down this opportunity to have sex with a clearly willing partner, an attractive young woman, then Beanie has proven his worth. This is negative meaning number 4, by the way. Serious people don't sex. People who have relationships and responsibilities, whether it be a father, a married man with children, or even a not married man, a single dad, whoever, they don't sex. Or it might be Captain America, who never sexes either. Serious people don't sex. Beanie proves his worth. This is why Beanie is not Mark. Down in the basement, the main event is birthday boy Blue, 89 years old, versus Jeannie and Jenny from Hayden Dormitory in a KY wrestling match in a wading pool, children's wading pool. Just as the match is about to begin, Jeannie and Jenny, who were wearing very little to start with, discard their tops and reveal their breasts. The next thing that happens is that Blue instructs Frank, just ring the bell, you fucking pansy. And Jeannie and Jenny advance on Blue. Come on, what are you waiting for? We get a long shot of the two of them filling the frame, pretty tits pushed to the foreground. Reverse the shot, look back at Blue, he's not moving, he's not speaking, he goes over backwards, bam, Blue's dead. Dead. The wanting disaster. Wanting sex, desiring sex, having sex, even this. Wrestling a couple of topless girls, which isn't sex, penetrating any of their orifices, but it's pretty sexy. Pow, bad result. Blue's dead. Which is hysterical. We've seen bare breasts twice in this film. Well, I suppose 3 times. First time is on Heidi's television screen, foretelling the catastrophe that's about to befall Mitch when the strangers come out of the bathroom. Second time is when the strangers come out of the bathroom. The woman is bare-breasted, and Mitch's life is blown to pieces. And the third time is now, and Blue dies. Are you picking up on the negativity? By the way, if any of this is interesting to you, please like, subscribe, share, make a comment. It's great for YouTube's view of my efforts. I appreciate it. It's about 1 hour, 6 minutes into the film when Mitch sits down in a diner with Nicole. He wants to talk to her. His involvement in the fraternity has strained their relationship. She heard that Blue died. And her boyfriend, Mark, has told her that Mark caught Mitch harassing one of the caterers at the birthday party. This, of course, is a total lie. Mitch caught Mark. But notice, people are perceived as heroes or villains based on whether or not they have sexual encounters. People who have sexual encounters are bad. And now Nicole thinks that Mitch has had a sexual encounter, and this is reinforced when Darcy happens by. Darcy, of course, the boss's daughter, the maybe 17-year-old, and she says, "My dad doesn't know anything, so it's totally cool," giving Nicole, of course, the impression that Mitch has had sex with Darcy. And this is when Nicole gets up and walks out. Nicole turns her back on Mitch as soon as she starts to think that Mitch has maybe had some sex. Now, yes, Darcy is very young, but again, the movie's presenting it that way. The movie chose it that way, right? That's a deliberate choice. Everything you see on screen is a deliberate choice by the filmmakers. Darcy could have been 35. She's not. She's barely 18. And therefore, Nicole can walk out. Sex is always presented in a negative way. Are we going to have a scene where Mitch says, "Oh, hey, Nicole, meet Darcy. Darcy's 27 years old, and she and I slept together once. How are you, Darcy?" And Nicole says, "Nice to meet you." That's not going to happen. It's always going to be a negative result. It's always going to cast the characters who had sex as, at the very least, flawed and in the wrong. So then the movie spends a good deal of time on the subplot where the fraternity battles the nefarious Dean Pritchard, and the fraternity wins, so don't worry about that. Mitch decides to move out of his house for reasons that aren't clear, because the fraternity is moving into Dean Pritchard's old residence, so they're getting a magnificent new frat house. I don't know why Mitch has to move out, but he does. And Nicole turns up in his driveway as he's moving away, as he's loading his moving truck, and she tells him, "You were right about Mark. I caught him red-handed." What's wrong with Mark? Sex. Why do you pick up with people? Infidelity. It's always about sex. Sex is the worst thing a person can do. Sex is the crime. But then her body language and her tone is very flirtatious with Mitch now, and she says she's always been curious about what goes on in frat houses. So Mitch offers to show her around an empty house with no furniture in it. All the furniture's in the truck. So are they having sex on the linoleum? I don't know. But they don't mention sex here. And this is very common. The audience is going to look at that scene and say they're going to have a sexual and romantic relationship. They're going to go on and be happy having sex together. But the movie doesn't actually tell us that. He's going to show her the house. And the movie makers know that they're implying it. They know the impression they're giving the audience. But that's smoke and mirrors. Of course, it's all smoke and mirrors. It's film. But that's not really there. They don't kiss. They don't embrace. We don't see them have sex. They don't say to each other, "Let's go in there and have some sex." Nothing. We will never see that in this film. He just offers to show her around the house, and there's a little sort of flirtatious looking back and forth, and into the house they go. The movie doesn't actually tell us that they ever have a sexual relationship. And that's negative meme number 4. Serious people don't sex. So let's review. At the end of Old School, which is allegedly about sex, but it's mostly about shame, Mitch is not in a sexual relationship. He's not actually in a sexual relationship. The movie implies that he's going to have one with Nicole, but we don't see that happen. We don't see so much as a kiss between the two of them. This relationship that we're supposed to be supporting, that we're supposed to be rooting for throughout the film, we don't see one kiss, much less any sex. Beanie's marriage is as sexless as ever. Frank, who seems to have never had any sexual contact with his wife, is divorced now. She dumped him. And of course, Blue is dead. blasted out of this world by Jenny and Jeannie and the breasts from Hayden Dormitory. There's a short scene in the credits where Frank bumps into Heidi in a grocery store. And Heidi's very glad to see him. Frank, you look great. How are you? Etc., etc. And her behavior's very flirtatious. And I'd still fuck Julia Lewis, and you would too. And she invites him to come over like the next night. Oh, just meet some internet friends. And Frank understands what that means. And he's thrilled. You know, she walks away. Okay, see you then. And he starts behaving clownishly. I'm back. Oh, and worrying other people in the grocery store. It looks like Frank, it's heavily implied that Frank is going to have some sex. And Frank is a clown. Sex, clown. Your problem is sex. Frank is going to plunge himself into Heidi's bad, evil sex world. And Frank is a fool. So that's that. That's what Old School is telling you about sex. It seems like fun. The movie is hilarious and there's some very pretty tits in it, but the actual attitude of the filmmakers that's being expressed to you is that sex is danger and evil. So, if this is interesting to you, please come back next week for next week's episode. Also, look at the existing videos. There are a couple of dozen of these, I think, at this point. I appreciate your time. Please like, subscribe, share it around.